The air in the penthouse was always still, heavy with the scent of expensive wood polish and unspoken expectations. Liam Thorne, CEO of Thorne Global, stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, the glittering expanse of Manhattan spread out beneath him like a discarded toy. He wasn't seeing the empire he'd built, though. He saw only the bars of a very gilded cage. At 35, he commanded boardrooms, made billion-dollar decisions, and yet his personal life was a wasteland of calculated gestures and hollow affections. Every woman he'd ever seriously dated, every friend he'd ever truly confided in, had eventually revealed their true allegiance to the Thorne name, the Thorne fortune, the Thorne lifestyle. Love, he'd long suspected, was just another commodity in his world, bought and sold with a chilling efficiency that left him utterly desolate. A week ago, during a particularly sterile charity gala, where conversations revolved around market trends and investment portfolios more than genuine human connection, a radical, almost absurd idea had seized him. He needed to disappear. Not from the world, but from his world. He needed to shed the skin of Liam Thorne, the billionaire, and become someone else entirely. Someone unremarkable. Someone ordinary. It was a desperate gamble, a last-ditch effort to discover if genuine affection, untainted by dollar signs, even existed for him. He wouldn't just step down, he would step out. He spent days meticulously planning his vanishing act. His board was told he was taking an indefinite sabbatical for health reasons, a vague but believable excuse that sent ripples of speculation through the financial world. His staff was given strict instructions, his private penthouse secured, his private jet grounded. He meticulously emptied his accounts, leaving just enough for his incognito existence, transferring the bulk to a trust managed by his most loyal, ironclad legal team, with specific instructions to deny any inquiries about his whereabouts. He even grew a scruffy beard, traded his bespoke suits for worn jeans and an unassuming leather jacket, and swapped his luxury sedan for public transport. His new identity? Liam Davis, a struggling writer in New York City. The choice of writer was deliberate. It implied a certain intellectual pursuit, a depth that might appeal to the kind of woman he hoped to attract, while also providing a convenient, low-income cover story. New York City, with its boundless anonymity and its brutal, beautiful reality, was the perfect stage for his audacious experiment. He rented a small, slightly run-down apartment in a pre-war building in a less fashionable but still vibrant part of Brooklyn, the kind of place where the heating hissed and the pipes groaned, a stark, almost jarring contrast to the silent efficiency of his previous residences. The landlord, a gruff but kindly man, had no idea he was dealing with one of the city's most powerful magnates. Liam had paid the first few months' rent in cash, a discreet stack of bills that raised no eyebrows, a far cry from the instantaneous digital transfers that usually handled his finances. His apartment was sparse, furnished with pieces from a second-hand store, a wobbly desk, a comfortable but faded armchair, a bookshelf he'd filled with classic literature, and a few half-hearted attempts at his own manuscript. He even bought a cheap, slightly chipped coffee mug, replacing the fine china that had graced his previous breakfast tables. Every detail was crafted to scream ordinary, approachable, financially unburdened by extravagant wealth. The purpose was singular, laser-focused. He wanted to meet women who saw him, truly saw him, as Liam Davis, the aspiring, perhaps struggling writer. He wanted to date, to laugh, to connect on a level completely devoid of his vast fortune. He knew the deception was profound, a carefully constructed lie that felt both exhilarating and deeply unsettling. But what was the alternative? Another lifetime of cynical relationships, always wondering if he was loved or merely tolerated for his prestige? This was his last stand against an existence he found increasingly meaningless. He was determined to test potential partners, to put them through an unwitting trial by ordinary life. His ultimate goal, the elusive prize he craved more than any acquisition or IPO, was to find someone who loved him for himself, for the quiet thoughts he harbored, for the sometimes melancholy humor he possessed, for the man beneath the carefully constructed layers of wealth and power. He wanted a love so genuine, so pure, that it would thrive even when exposed to the harsh light of his true identity. He just had to find her. And the irony of seeking truth through such an elaborate fabrication was not lost on him. It was a constant, gnawing presence, a silent accomplice in his radical quest. The scent of lemon polish and industrial cleaner clung to Sophia's uniform, a stark contrast to the subtle, expensive perfumes that usually graced the air around her at family galas. It was Tuesday, and Tuesday meant the Upper West Side, another anonymous apartment, another life observed from the fringes. Sophia Sterling, scion of the Sterling media empire, heiress to a fortune that could buy most small nations, found an unexpected solace in the rhythmic squeak of a mop across hardwood floors. Her hands, often adorned with heirloom diamonds at formal events, now deftly maneuvered a vacuum cleaner, extracting dust bunnies and forgotten crumbs from under-worn sofas.
This was her rebellion, her pilgrimage to the real world, a defiant whisper against the gilded cage her life had always been, a quiet refusal of the path meticulously laid out for her. From birth, Sophia had been cocooned in luxury, every whim catered to, every path smoothed by an army of staff and an endless supply of money. Yet, beneath the shimmering surface, she had always felt a profound disconnect, a nagging emptiness that no amount of privilege could fill. The conversations at her family's dinner table revolved around mergers and acquisitions, philanthropic galas, and the latest designer collections. Authentic human connection, raw emotion, the quiet struggles of everyday existence. These were foreign concepts, glimpsed only through the curated lenses of television screens or filtered charity events. She craved truth, unvarnished and unapologetic, and knew instinctively it wouldn't be found within the exclusive zip code of her upbringing. Her secret life as a domestic worker had begun 6 months ago, a clandestine operation requiring meticulous planning and an almost theatrical commitment to her new persona. Under the alias Sophie Clark, she'd crafted a plausible backstory. A bright young woman working odd jobs to save for art school, eager for experience beyond her small hometown. It wasn't entirely a lie. She did harbor a profound passion for abstract painting, a pursuit her family deemed a charming hobby rather than a serious ambition. But the cleaning, the dog walking, the occasional catering gig, these were her true education. Each new home was a textbook, each interaction a lesson in the textures and realities of lives fundamentally different from her own. She learned about leaky faucets, about the forgotten dreams tucked away in dusty attics, about the quiet dignity of people living within their means, and the subtle ways they imbued their homes with personality. She was remarkably good at it, too. Her keen observational skills, honed by years of subtly analyzing complex social dynamics at high-stakes gatherings, now served her in a different capacity. She noticed the slight shift in a client's mood by the way they left their coffee cup, the hidden stresses in the patterns of discarded mail, the silent stories told by framed photographs and well-loved books. She wasn't just cleaning spaces, she was touching lives, albeit indirectly, absorbing the nuances of their daily routines. And in return, she received something invaluable: genuine interactions, however brief. A shared laugh with a client over a stubborn stain, a heartfelt thank you, the feeling of honest work earning an honest wage. These moments, as small as they were, nourished a part of her soul that had long felt starved for true connection and purpose. There were risks, of course. The constant fear of exposure was a dull ache beneath the surface of her quiet determination. A chance encounter with a family acquaintance at a grocery store. A misstep in conversation that might betray her privileged upbringing. The persistent worry that her parents might uncover her clandestine activities. The thought of their reaction, a mixture of bewildered disappointment and utter scandal, was enough to make her heart clench. They would never understand her desperate need to escape the opulent prison they consider home. They would see it as an act of defiance, a foolish charade, rather than a profound quest for self-discovery and connection. The potential fallout was immense, yet she continued. But the fear, while present, was never enough to deter her. Each day, as she shed her Sophie Clark uniform and returned to the quiet grandeur of her penthouse apartment, the lessons she learned lingered. She saw the world with new eyes, a spectrum of human experience, far richer and more complex than she had ever imagined. The stark contrast between the lives she cleaned and the life she returned to fueled her resolve, deepening her understanding of humanity beyond the gilded confines of her birthright. She was searching for a kindred spirit, perhaps, someone who saw beyond the superficial, someone who valued authenticity as much as she did. She didn't know where she would find them or who they would be, but she was convinced that her journey into the ordinary was leading her closer. It was a pilgrimage of purpose, a quiet revolution against the expectations of her name, driven by the burning desire to understand what truly mattered. She continued her work, bright, observant, and secretly hopeful, unaware that across town, another soul was embarking on a remarkably similar journey, driven by an identical, desperate longing for genuine connection, veiled by his own elaborate fabrication. Liam, now a struggling writer, inhabiting his modest Brooklyn apartment, quickly discovered that the pursuit of genuine connection didn't exempt him from the mundane necessities of life. Dust, dishes, and an ever-growing pile of laundry were persistent reminders of the ordinary existence he had chosen. He needed a housekeeper, not just for practical reasons, but as another facet of his experiment, an opportunity to observe human nature from a different angle, without the distorting lens of his true identity. He posted an ad online, deliberately brief and unassuming, seeking efficiency and discretion. Sophia, meticulously sifting through job listings on her second-hand laptop, found Liam's advertisement among dozens of offers for penthouses and sprawling estates. Housekeeper needed, Brooklyn Heights.
Flexible hours, competitive pay. It was precisely the kind of low-key engagement she sought, far removed from the opulent world she was trying to understand. She composed a polite, professional reply, her inherited grace subtly veiled by the practiced humility of someone seeking domestic work. The day of the interview dawned crisp and clear. Liam opened the door to find a woman standing there, not quite fitting any preconceived notion he harbored. She was dressed simply, practically, but carried herself with an unmistakable composure, a quiet dignity that resonated with an inner strength. Her hands, though clearly used to work, were elegant, and her eyes, a remarkable hazel, held a piercing intelligence that seemed to absorb every detail of her surroundings in a single fluid sweep. "Mr. Hayes?" Sophia asked, extending a hand, her voice low and clear. "Sophia, heiress. I'm here about the housekeeping position." Liam took her hand, a firm, confident grip, and felt a subtle jolt. Her presence was unexpectedly striking. "Please, come in. Sophia," Liam corrected, gesturing into the small but tidy living space. "Thanks for coming." Sophia stepped inside, her keen eyes assessing the apartment. It was small, a brownstone layout, but clean enough, certainly not neglected. There were books everywhere, a well-worn leather armchair, and a faint scent of brewing coffee. Her gaze paused momentarily on a rather expensive-looking espresso machine, an odd luxury for a struggling writer, she mused, filing the detail away. Liam, she noticed, was unexpectedly polite, almost deferential,
a stark contrast to the often imperious or dismissive demeanor of other male clients, regardless of their financial status. He met her gaze directly, his blue eyes holding an unusual earnestness that disarmed her slightly. He didn't carry the desperate air she sometimes observed in those truly living paycheck to paycheck. Instead, there was a quiet confidence about him that seemed to transcend his stated circumstances. He wore humility like a well-tailored suit. It just seemed to fit him naturally. Their conversation, though strictly professional, quickly revealed unexpected depths. Liam, subtly testing the waters, asked about his experience, her approach to household management. He was looking not just for competence, but for character. Sophia, sensing his unspoken inquiries, responded with a quiet, articulate confidence. She spoke of the satisfaction of creating order, the therapeutic rhythm of her work, and the unique perspectives it offered into diverse lives. She wasn't merely listing skills, she was sharing a philosophy. Liam, usually adept at seeing through superficiality, found himself genuinely intrigued. This wasn't the carefully crafted persona he expected from an interviewee. It was something authentic, disarmingly real. He even found himself momentarily forgetting his own elaborate deception, caught in the genuine current of their interaction. "You're quite sharp for a housekeeper, Sophia," he observed, not condescendingly, but with a note of genuine surprise in his voice. Sophia didn't flinch. "I believe every job, no matter how humble, deserves sharp attention, Mr. Hayes, and I've found that intelligence is not exclusive to any particular profession or income bracket." Her tone was polite, but carried a subtle, unspoken challenge. That response piqued Liam's interest even further. It was precisely the kind of direct, unvarnished insight he sought. "Touché, Sophia. Fair point and well taken." He was genuinely impressed. She wasn't just efficient, she possessed a quiet wit, an understated intelligence that resonated deeply with his own values. This wasn't just a service provider. There was a spark there, an independent spirit he hadn't anticipated. He found himself wondering about her story, about why someone with such obvious intellectual capacity was cleaning apartments. He quickly offered her the job, a decision made not just out of need, but out of an unlooked-for intrigue. Sophia accepted, a flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. The pay was fair, the hours flexible, and the client, intriguing. His apartment felt less like a necessity and more like a deliberate choice, although she couldn't quite articulate why. There was an almost naive honesty about him that she found endearing, a profound courtesy that set him apart. For a struggling writer, he seemed remarkably composed, even gentle, and his slight formality of language hinted at an education far beyond what he let on. These were small discrepancies, subtle notes that struck a chord with her observant nature, but she filed them away as charming eccentricities of an intellectual, not as glaring contradictions. She was drawn to his unfeigned kindness, a quality often conspicuously absent in the circles she secretly moved through. This was an unexpected twist to her usual cleaning assignments, one that sparked a cautious, burgeoning curiosity. Their first official cleaning session began the following week, transforming Liam's modest apartment into a silent stage for their unspoken observations. Liam, claiming to be working from home on a particularly stubborn chapter, found himself discreetly observing Sophia. He watched her move with a graceful economy of motion, her focus absolute, her efficiency undeniable. She treated his humble possessions with a respect that surprised him, gently polishing a chipped wooden frame, humming a low, tuneful melody as she organized his worn paperbacks, replacing them in exact order.
This attention to detail, this genuine care, was a stark contrast to the often careless handling he sometimes observed from even the highest-paid staff in his corporate life. This woman, with her quiet diligence and thoughtful demeanor, was a revelation. She was genuinely present, genuinely engaged in the task, however mundane. This, he mused, was the authenticity he had sought. He found himself offering her a cup of freshly brewed coffee, a gesture that felt both natural and entirely against his initial plan to maintain strict professional distance. Sophia accepted the coffee, her fingers brushing his as she took the mug, a small, unnoticed current passing between them. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice soft, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "That's very kind." She noticed the warmth in his eyes, the almost imperceptible nervousness in his gesture. He wasn't playing a role, he was genuinely considerate. As she cleaned, she found him surprisingly easy to talk to. He asked about her day, about the challenges of her work, listening intently, truly listening, something few people bothered to do. He shared a why observation about the struggle of finding inspiration, a subtle hint at his writer's block. Sophia responded with an anecdote about finding beauty in the overlooked details of life, a quiet insight that momentarily silenced Liam. He was genuinely struck by her perspective, realizing she saw the world with the same discerning eye he did, albeit from a different vantage point. Each interaction, though professional, added another layer to their mutual intrigue. Liam was captivated by her unexpected depth, her sharp mind cloaked beneath a housekeeper's apron, finding in her the genuine connection he so desperately craved. Sophia, in turn, was drawn to his gentle nature and the quiet integrity he exuded, a stark contrast to the often arrogant and demanding men she knew from her own privileged world. Neither suspected the elaborate charade the other was enacting. They were two celestial bodies, orbiting each other, each perfectly disguised, drawn by an invisible yet undeniable gravitational pull. The irony of their situation, two wealthy individuals living out their fantasies of normalcy, was completely lost on them both. They were simply two people, seemingly from different worlds, beginning to see something genuinely compelling in each other, unaware that the very foundation of their burgeoning connection was built on a web of carefully constructed, well-intentioned lies. The stage was set, the players in position, and the silent, unspoken drama of their hidden lives had just truly begun. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm, each Tuesday morning marking Sophia's arrival at Liam's meticulously kept, yet clearly lived-in apartment. What began as a purely professional exchange, a brisk walkthrough of tasks and a polite goodbye, subtly, almost imperceptibly, began to shift. The air, initially filled with the whirring of the vacuum and the faint scent of cleaning products, slowly started to resonate with the sound of their voices, initially hesitant, then increasingly confident, weaving through the domestic soundtrack. Liam, perched on his armchair, ostensibly immersed in a book or typing away at his laptop, found his concentration increasingly fractured by her presence. He'd catch snippets of her humming a forgotten tune as she dusted the shelves, where the quiet, focused intensity in her movements and an unexpected urge to engage her would bubble to the surface. He'd start with an innocuous question about the best way to clean a particular stain, or a casual remark on the changing weather, but these superficial overtures quickly deepened. Sophia, for her part, noticed the subtle ways Liam seemed to linger after she had finished a task, the way his gaze would follow her for a beat longer than strictly necessary. He wasn't demanding or intrusive, instead there was an appealing gentleness to his curiosity. She'd find herself offering more than a concise answer, expanding on an observation about the bustling city outside, or a recent documentary she had watched. One afternoon he commented on a particularly intricate pattern in the dust motes dancing in a sunbeam, leading them into an unexpected discussion about the subjective nature of beauty and the overlooked artistry in everyday life. Sophia, accustomed to the shallow conversations of her social circle, found herself genuinely stimulated, able to articulate thoughts she usually kept guarded. Liam, in turn, discovered a sharpness in her intellect that surprised and delighted him, far removed from the superficiality he had grown weary of in his previous life. She didn't just clean his space, she subtly invigorated it, bringing an unpretentious insight that resonated deeply within him. Their conversations blossomed, branching out from mundane observations to more profound exchanges. Liam, still playing the part of the struggling writer, would sometimes vent about the elusive muse, the torment of an empty page, or the crushing weight of expectation he felt, a well-rehearsed echo with his CEO pressures. Sophia, adopting her working-class persona, would listen intently, her brow furrowed in genuine empathy. She found herself offering unexpected advice, drawing parallels from her varied experiences, relating the persistence required in her physical work to the mental stamina needed for creative endeavors. Sometimes, she mused, polishing a framed photograph of a cityscape, you just have to start, even if you don't know where you're going. The path reveals itself with each step you take.
Liam paused, his fingers hovering over his keyboard, genuinely struck by her simple wisdom. It was advice that transcended their assumed roles, tapping into a universal truth about perseverance that he too often forgot amidst his own high-stakes corporate battles. Sophia, in turn, began to share glimpses of her other life. Humorous anecdotes about demanding clients, observations about the diverse lives she encountered in her cleaning gigs, or her quiet ambitions to perhaps one day open a small independent antique shop, a secret passion that truly stemmed from her family's extensive art collection and appreciation for history. Liam listened, captivated. He saw a depth of character, a resilience, and a quiet dream that endeared her to him immensely. He realized that beneath the practical exterior, there was a rich inner world, full of imagination and an earnest desire for more than just survival. Their shared love for literature, revealed during a discussion about a book she'd seen on his shelf, became a particularly strong bridge. They found common ground in their appreciation for classic novels and obscure poets, trading recommendations, each delighting in the other's thoughtful interpretations. The unspoken attraction between them grew like an unacknowledged but palpable force. A lingering touch as she handed him a freshly laundered shirt, a shared glance across the room that held an extra beat of intensity, the way their voices unconsciously softened when they addressed each other. There was a warmth that began to emanate from their interactions, an undeniable current that pulsed just beneath the surface of their polite, evolving friendship. Liam found himself anticipating Tuesdays with a fervor he hadn't experienced in years, his heart giving a small, hopeful lurch each time he heard her key in the lock. Sophia, too, felt an unusual lightness in her step as she approached his apartment building, a strange excitement that had nothing to do with the day's tasks and everything to do with the man inside. The apartment, once just another job site, was transforming into a space of unexpected connection, a quiet sanctuary where two souls cloaked in careful disguises were unknowingly drawn closer by the very qualities they sought in the world: authenticity, kindness, and an intelligence that met their own. Neither gave a thought to the grand estates they owned or the multi-million-dollar corporations they ran. In that modest New York apartment, they were simply Liam and Sophia, two people discovering an intoxicating blend of intellectual synergy and emotional resonance, utterly unaware.
Liam paused, his fingers hovering over his keyboard, genuinely struck by her simple wisdom. It was advice that transcended their assumed roles, tapping into a universal truth about perseverance that he too often forgot amidst his own high-stakes corporate battles. Sophia, in turn, began to share glimpses of her other life, humorous anecdotes about demanding clients, observations about the diverse lives she encountered in her cleaning gigs, or her quiet ambitions to perhaps one day open a small independent antique shop, a secret passion that truly stemmed from her family's extensive art collection and appreciation for history. Liam listened, captivated. He saw a depth of character, a resilience, and a quiet dream that endeared her to him immensely. He realized that beneath the practical exterior, there was a rich inner world full of imagination and an earnest desire for more than just survival. Their shared love for literature, revealed during a discussion about a book she'd seen on his shelf, became a particularly strong bridge. They found common ground in their appreciation for classic novels and obscure poets, trading recommendations, each delighting in the other's thoughtful interpretations. The unspoken attraction between them grew like an unacknowledged but palpable force. A lingering touch as she handed him a freshly laundered shirt, a shared glance across the room that held an extra beat of intensity, the way their voices unconsciously softened when they addressed each other. There was a warmth that began to emanate from their interactions, an undeniable current that pulsed just beneath the surface of their polite, evolving friendship.
Liam found himself anticipating Tuesdays with a fervor he hadn't experienced in years, his heart giving a small, hopeful lurch each time he heard her key in the lock. Sophia, too, felt an unusual lightness in her step as she approached his apartment building, a strange excitement that had nothing to do with the day's tasks and everything to do with the man inside. The apartment, once just another job site, was transforming into a space of unexpected connection, a quiet sanctuary where two souls, cloaked in careful disguises, were unknowingly drawn closer by the very qualities they sought in the world: authenticity, kindness, and an intelligence that met their own. Neither gave a thought to the grand estates they owned or the multi-million-dollar corporations they ran. In that modest New York apartment, they were simply Liam and Sophia, two people discovering an intoxicating blend of intellectual synergy and emotional resonance, utterly unaware that their carefully constructed worlds were about to collide and that the beautiful, fragile connection they were forming was perched precariously on a foundation of unspoken yet well-intentioned lies. The subtle tension thickened with each passing day, a silent countdown ticking towards an inevitable and potentially explosive revelation. It began subtly, with the lingering scent of freshly brewed coffee that Sophia had insisted on making for both of them, a small gesture that shattered the invisible wall between employer and employee. Her work, once a meticulous, solitary ballet of cleaning and organizing, now often intertwined with Liam's presence. He'd emerge from his writing nook, ostensibly for a break, and find himself drawn into conversation, first about the weather or city life, then swiftly spiraling into debates about literature, philosophy, or the complexities of human nature. One afternoon, Sophia, having finished dusting the last bookshelf, found Liam still at his kitchen counter, nursing a mug. "Long day at the keyboard?" she'd asked, a smile playing on her lips. He looked up, his eyes, usually intense, softening. "Something like that. My characters are being particularly stubborn today." He paused, then gestured to the empty chair beside him. "You know, I was just about to order some takeout. Thai, perhaps. You must be hungry after all that work." The offer, so casual yet entirely unexpected, surprised Sophia. Her initial instinct was to decline, to maintain the professional distance she had so carefully cultivated. But the warmth in his gaze, the genuine invitation in his voice, disarmed her. "Thai sounds perfect," she found herself saying, a quiet thrill fluttering in her chest. That first shared meal, eaten amidst the organized chaos of Liam's modest apartment, was a turning point. The professional boundaries, already fragile, dissolved completely. They talked for hours, the takeout containers growing cold, forgotten as their conversation flowed from one topic to another. Liam discovered Sophia's uncanny ability to articulate complex thoughts with simple elegance, her surprising knowledge of art and history, and her deeply empathetic view of the world. He admired her resilience, her pragmatic approach to life, and the quiet dignity with which she carried herself, qualities he rarely encountered in his real world, where privilege often bred a different kind of detachment. He found himself utterly captivated by her fierce independence, a spirit that shone through her humble circumstances. Here was a woman, he thought, who knew the value of hard work, who didn't shy away from life's grit, and whose intelligence was sharp and unburdened by pretense. He saw genuine warmth, a quick wit, and a wisdom that belied her apparent age and perceived struggles. He was falling, irrevocably, for the woman he believed to be Sophia, the hard-working housekeeper, completely oblivious to the grand estates and generational wealth that were as much a part of her reality as his own were to him. Sophia, in turn, found herself increasingly drawn to Liam. His thoughtfulness, a quality so often absent in the entitled men of her social circle, was a revelation. He listened, truly listened, offering insightful observations and challenging her perspectives in a way that exhilarated her. She saw past the struggling writer facade and recognized a profound depth, a quiet integrity, and a gentle soul that resonated deeply with her own. He never spoke of money or status, only of ideas, passions, and the pursuit of a meaningful life. He possessed a humility that she found incredibly attractive, a stark contrast to the performative altruism she often witnessed. She admired his dedication to his craft, even when it seemed to yield little financial reward, mistaking his struggle for an admirable perseverance rather than a carefully constructed masquerade. The thought of his quiet, determined fight to make ends meet, combined with his inherent kindness, made her heart ache in the most beautiful way. She was falling for the man she believed him to be, the kind, thoughtful, brilliant writer, uncorrupted by the excesses of wealth, a man who saw her for who she truly was, not for the name attached to her family's fortune. Their shared meals became a regular occurrence, often stretching late into the evening. Sophia would linger, her duties long complete, ostensibly to discuss a book Liam was reading, or a current event. Neither of them acknowledged the shift, the profound blurring of professional lines, but the apartment now buzzed with an unspoken intimacy, a touch on the arm during a shared laugh, a lingering gaze across the table, the comfortable silence that settled between them. Each interaction was a delicate thread weaving their lives closer together. They were building a world within the confines of that modest apartment, a world of shared intellect and burgeoning affection, utterly unaware that the true foundations of their individual lives were about to be revealed, and the beautiful, fragile connection they were forming was perched precariously on a foundation of unspoken yet well-intentioned lies. The anticipation of their next meeting, a new kind of anticipation, now dominated their thoughts, pushing aside the mundane concerns of their individual double lives, drawing them deeper into a beautifully dangerous game of emotional chess, where the only checkmate could be the truth. The unspoken intimacy of their last encounter quickly materialized into Liam's bold yet casually phrased invitation, a walk in Central Park. Not as employer and employee, but simply as two people drawn inexplicably together. Sophia's heart quickened. She accepted with a shy smile that belied the torrent of emotions within. This wasn't just a date. It was an acknowledgement of something fragile and profound, a definite departure from their meticulously constructed roles. The crisp autumn air embraced them as they strolled, the vibrant hues of changing leaves mirroring the blossoming feelings in their chests. Liam, usually guarded, laughed freely, sharing anecdotes about his imagined writer's block that felt disturbingly real. Sophia's face lit up with genuine amusement, her eyes sparkling, though a tiny tremor of guilt ran through her as she recounted a fabricated story about a demanding former employer. He found her perspective, her simple joys, utterly refreshing, a stark contrast to his real life's jaded cynicism. For Sophia, walking beside Liam felt like discovering a new facet of herself, unburdened by expectations. She admired his keen observations, his gentle humor, the way his hand inadvertently brushed hers. This was the man she was falling for, kind, intelligent, humble, utterly captivating in his unassuming charm. Each shared glance, each shared laugh felt like a vital confirmation of their connection, untainted by status. Yet the persistent whisper of her own hidden truth gnawed at the edges of her delight. A small, cold fear. Their walk led to a small, unassuming Italian restaurant Liam had discovered. Over plates of pasta and shared tiramisu, their conversation deepened, flowing easily from childhood memories to aspirations. Liam confessed dreams he hadn't articulated in years, creating something meaningful, a life not defined by wealth. Sophia listened intently, her gaze unwavering, making him feel truly seen, truly heard. He felt an intense urge to confess, to lay bare the truth, but words caught in his throat.
What if this genuine connection shattered under his reality? He couldn't risk it, not yet. He was too enchanted by being loved simply for Liam, the struggling writer. Sophia, too, felt the gnawing ache of her deception. Every compliment Liam paid to her resourcefulness or down-to-earth practicality felt like a subtle jab, a reminder of her elaborate facade. She imagined telling him, imagining the disbelief, perhaps even the anger that would flash across his kind face. The thought was unbearable. How could she explain that her desire to understand the world extended to experiencing it without the safety net of her family's name? Her carefully constructed housekeeper persona felt like a betrayal. Yet, when he spoke of their next time, a hopeful glint in his eyes, her heart soared, silencing the doubts.
She imagined a future with him, a cozy apartment, shared meals, a life of simple, profound happiness. She saw herself building a future with this man, the struggling writer, who saw past any superficiality to her core. The sheer normalcy of their burgeoning romance was a balm to her soul, a stark contrast to her high society life's stifling expectations. Liam was equally swept away by the intoxicating normalcy. This was what he had craved, an honest connection, a person who truly valued his mind and spirit, not his corporate empire. Sophia was everything he had envisioned and more. Intelligent, witty, fiercely independent, and utterly devoid of the avarice he associated with his world. He wanted to protect this nascent love, to nurture it away from the harsh realities of his wealth. He envisioned a future with her, a life free of suffocating expectations where he could pursue his passion for writing with Sophia by his side. The guilt, though, was a persistent phantom limb. He knew his deception was a ticking clock, but the fear of losing her, of shattering her pristine image of him, overshadowed ethical qualms. He convinced himself that when the time was right, she would understand, she would see his pure intentions, that this test was merely a desperate attempt to find genuine love. He wanted her to love Liam, the struggling writer, so that when Liam Thorne, the CEO, was revealed, her love would already be immutable. They parted ways that evening with a prolonged hug, the unspoken promise of more dates hanging in the air. Both returned to their respective lives, carrying the intoxicating warmth of their evening along with the growing weight of their concealed identities. They were two skilled players in a dangerous game of emotional poker, each holding a full house of secrets, desperately trying to bluff their way to a win, to a future built on carefully constructed illusions. The truth, however, was not merely a card to be played. It was a force of nature, gathering momentum, destined to crash through their carefully erected walls, threatening to reveal not just who they were, but who they had pretended to be, and demanding to know if their love could survive the wreckage. The air between them, once buzzing with unspoken intimacy, was now charged with a dangerous, thrilling tension, a silent countdown to an inevitable, potentially devastating reveal. They were irrevocably falling, not just for each other, but for the carefully curated versions of themselves, unaware that the foundation beneath them was made of quicksand, and the tide of truth was rapidly rising. Liam watched Sophia walk away that night, her silhouette bathed in the soft glow of the streetlights, a warmth spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with the chilly New York air. It was a warmth born of genuine affection, a feeling he hadn't believed possible for a man like him, perpetually surrounded by sycophants and fortune-seekers. Sophia was different. She saw him, the thoughtful, sometimes awkward man who loved old books and quiet evenings, not the titan of industry. The thought solidified in his mind. This was it. This was the love he had sought, untainted by wealth, pure and unburdened. Yet the burden of his lie pressed heavier than ever before. How could he ask her to love the real him if he hadn't given her the chance to know him? The time for games was over.
The time for truth, as terrifying as it might be, had arrived. He spent the next few days in a whirlwind of planning, orchestrating not just a confession, but an experience, a grand gesture that would underscore the seriousness of his intentions and the depth of his feelings. He wanted to show her not just his world, but why he had kept it hidden, and how much he valued the genuine connection they had forged despite his deception. He envisioned her shock, of course, but he held on to a fierce hope, a deep-seated belief that their connection was strong enough, true enough to weather the storm. His carefully constructed test had worked, hadn't it? He had found her. Now he just had to reveal the true prize. A week later, Liam called Sophia, his voice laced with an unusual excitement. He invited her to a surprise dinner, insisting she dress in something elegant, something for a special occasion. Sophia, her heart aflutter with anticipation, agreed without hesitation. She imagined a fancy restaurant, perhaps a rooftop bar, a romantic escalation of their already burgeoning relationship.
Her curiosity was piqued, her mind racing with possibilities, all of them delightful. She arrived at his modest apartment building, her usual vibrant self, albeit with an extra sparkle in her eyes. Liam met her at the entrance, not in his usual casual attire, but in a tailored suit that fit him like a second skin, highlighting his imposing presence, a look she had never seen before. A sleek black luxury sedan idled at the curb, its tinted windows hinting at a world far removed from the bustling streets of their everyday lives. "Ready for an adventure?" Liam asked, a nervous tremor in his voice that Sophia mistook for playful excitement. He opened the back door for her, and she slid inside, enveloped by the scent of expensive leather and an inexplicable sense of impending drama. The car moved silently through the city, the skyscrapers glowing like distant constellations. Sophia stole glances at Liam, who seemed different tonight, more intense, his gaze fixed on the passing cityscape, a subtle tension radiating from him. She felt a prickle of unease, a faint discord in the symphony of their perfect evening, but quickly dismissed it, attributing it to the nerves of a grand date. The car ascended, leaving the familiar street-level world behind, climbing higher and higher into the glittering urban tapestry. Sophia watched in awe as they entered a private driveway, a secluded oasis amidst the concrete jungle, leading to a towering residential building she recognized as one of the most exclusive addresses in Manhattan. Her breath hitched. This wasn't just any building. This was the pinnacle of luxury, far beyond the reach of a struggling writer. A uniformed valet greeted them, nodding respectfully at Liam, who merely offered a curt, acknowledging gesture. "Where are we, Liam?" she asked, her voice a whisper, a strange premonition coiling in her stomach. He offered her a small, enigmatic smile. "My home, Sophia. The place I live." He led her through a lavish lobby, hushed and opulent, unlike anything she had ever expected him to be associated with. Her mind raced, trying to reconcile the image of the humble, kind writer with this undeniable display of exorbitant wealth. The elevator ride was silent, excruciatingly long, carrying them further up, towards the clouds. When the doors finally chimed open, they revealed not a typical apartment hallway, but a breathtaking, expansive penthouse living space, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic vista of the city, glittering like spilled diamonds beneath a velvet sky. A subtle, sophisticated aroma of gourmet food hung in the air, candles flickered softly, and a renowned classical piece played at a low, elegant volume. It was magnificent, overwhelming, and utterly disorienting. Sophia stood rooted to the spot, her jaw slack, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. This couldn't be. This simply could not be his home. Liam stepped forward, his expression a mixture of profound relief and apprehension, his gaze fixed on her bewildered face. "Sophia," he began, his voice deeper, more serious than she had ever heard it. "There's something I need to tell you. Everything you think you know about me isn't entirely true." He gestured around the lavish space, the unspoken words hanging heavy in the air, a silent testament to the colossal secret he had harbored. The truth, in all its devastating glory, began to dawn on Sophia, a cold, sickening wave washing over her, freezing her smile, stealing her breath. Her eyes, wide and disbelieving, darted from the opulent surroundings to Liam's earnest, expectant face.
The man she had fallen for, the struggling writer, the kind and humble soul, was an illusion. The walls she had helped him build around his supposed modest life now crumbled, revealing not just a different man, but a chasm of deception, an abyss of untold truths. He took a hesitant step towards her, reaching out as if to touch her, to explain, to offer the understanding he so desperately sought, convinced that this confession, however shocking, was the ultimate proof of his love. But Sophia merely recoiled, a silent scream trapped in her throat, her mind grappling with the impossible, the unfathomable betrayal etched onto every polished surface of the breathtaking penthouse, the very air suddenly thick with the crushing weight of his lie. Sophia's mind raced, a furious, dizzying maelstrom of images and suppressed truths. The struggling writer, the modest apartment, the shared dreams of simple joys, all of it a meticulously crafted stage for his elaborate deception. He had tested her. The realization was a bitter pill, dissolving any lingering affection into a sharp, acrid taste of humiliation and profound betrayal. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides, nails digging into her palms, a desperate anchor in the swirling chaos. A struggling writer? She finally choked out, her voice barely a whisper, laced with the venom she hadn't known she possessed. You wanted genuine love, untainted with wealth? And this elaborate charade was your way of finding it? Did you enjoy playing the humble commoner, watching me fall for a ghost? Each word was a punch, aimed not just at him, but at the naive girl she had been, the one who had so readily believed in his contrived humility. Liam flinched, his earnest expression morphing into one of profound hurt, but before he could formulate a defense, before he could utter the apologies gathering on his lips, a shrill, insistent ringtone sliced through the suffocating tension, echoing too loudly in the vast, silent space.
Sophia's own phone, tucked away in her pocket, vibrated urgently, a stark intrusion. She instinctively pulled it out, her eyes still locked on Liam's, tears finally beginning to well. The caller ID flashed, a name she instantly dreaded seeing in this moment. It was her mother, no doubt with another frantic update, completely oblivious to the personal apocalypse unfolding around Sophia. Swiping to answer, a desperate attempt to maintain some semblance of privacy, she turned slightly, her voice low and strained. "Mom, now isn't really a good time," she began, but her mother's voice, sharp with urgency, was already cutting through. "Sophia, thank goodness. Your father's collapse was just confirmed on the evening news. They're saying he's stable, but the board is in absolute chaos. They need you here now. The whole family is on their way to St. Jude's. We need to present a united front for the press. You know what this means for the company, darling." The words, delivered with rapid-fire intensity, were not meant for Liam's ears, but in the echoing silence of the penthouse, they hung in the air, clear and devastatingly precise. Sophia froze, her face draining of all color. She could feel Liam's gaze, heavy and bewildered, on her. She slowly lowered the phone, the world around her tilting on its axis, a cruel, impossible irony now unfolding before them both. Liam's eyes, initially fixed on the phone in her hand, slowly widened, processing the fragments of the overheard conversation. Father's collapse, evening news, the board is in chaos, St. Jude's, the company. His own carefully constructed world, built on the premise of her struggling housekeeper identity, now shattered into a million pieces around him, mirroring the shards of her own broken trust. He stared at her, not seeing the struggling writer's kind housekeeper, but an heiress, a woman from a prominent family whose father's name was synonymous with corporate power, whose own existence was a gilded cage, much like his had been. The same lie, the same deception, now revealed on both sides, transforming his sense of righteous indignation into a gut-wrenching realization of mutual, devastating irony. The air thickened once more, but this time it was with the suffocating weight of their combined secrets, their parallel deceptions. The chasm between them, once created by his singular lie, had just doubled in depth and breadth, swallowing any hope of immediate understanding or forgiveness. It wasn't just his betrayal anymore, it was theirs. And in that moment, as their eyes met across the vast, opulent expanse of his penthouse,
Any fragile bridge of connection they had painstakingly built between their disguised selves collapsed, leaving behind only the rubble of their astonishing reciprocal deceit. The silence after Liam's revelation and Sophia's accidental unmasking wasn't just thick, it was suffocating. A vacuum pulling the air from their lungs, replacing it with the acrid taste of betrayal. "You lied to me," Sophia finally choked out, her voice not rising but sinking into a raw, guttural whisper that carried more venom than any shout. Her eyes, usually so warm and perceptive, were now icy shards, fixated on Liam, stripping away his carefully constructed facade. His hands clenched, knuckles white, trembling not from fear, but from a volcanic eruption of pain and fury. Liam flinched, the accusation a physical blow. Yet a flicker of his own deep hurt ignited in response. "I lied?" he retorted, his voice strained, incredulous. "What about you, Sophia? Sophia! The struggling writer's kind housekeeper? The woman who came to my apartment, feigning humility, playing the part of someone needing a job? You stood there, right here, and let me believe you were ordinary?" His gesture encompassed the opulent penthouse, a stark contrast to the modest apartment where their farce had begun. The truth, in its brutal symmetry, was a weapon wielded by both, leaving no victor, only casualties. "You tested me," Sophia accused, the word a brand searing deep. "You put on an act to see if I was genuine? Did you enjoy watching me? Thinking I was naive, falling for your little game?" Her voice rose now, a tremor of anguish underlying the indignation. "Everything we shared, every conversation, every moment, was it all just part of your experiment? A performance for your amusement?" Tears welled in her eyes, hot and stinging, not just for the lie, but for the beautiful, fragile connection she now realized had been built on quicksand. Liam's jaw tightened. "My amusement? Sophia, I was looking for something real, something untainted by wealth, and you did the exact same thing. You were living out your little fantasy, playing at being a commoner, just like me. Don't you dare try to paint yourself as the innocent victim here. You were just as deceptive, just as calculating in your own way. You wanted to understand everyday life, didn't you? Well, congratulations, Sophia. You just understood betrayal." The words hung in the air, sharp and bitter. Every shared laugh, every vulnerable confession, every tender glance now twisted into a cruel mockery. Their shared dreams, once so vibrant, dissolved into ash. The intellectual connection they'd prided themselves on felt hollow, a clever ruse played by two masters of disguise. "So this whole time," Sophia whispered, her voice barely audible over the roar of her own heartbreak, "you never saw me. You saw a project, a test subject." Liam ran a hand through his hair, his earlier confidence completely shattered, replaced by a raw, desperate confusion. "And you, Sophia, did you ever see Liam, or just the kind, humble writer who was a convenient vessel for your own escapism?" The irony was a physical weight, pressing down on them both, flattening any hope of immediate rational thought. The anger was a protective shield, the only thing preventing them from collapsing under the immense sorrow of what they had lost. They were two mirrors reflecting each other's deceit, each unwilling to accept that their own reflection was just as flawed. I can't look at you right now," Sophia finally declared, her voice cracking, her gaze tearing away from his. The penthouse, once a symbol of Liam's honesty, now felt like a gilded cage of lies, trapping them both in its opulent, suffocating embrace. "Get out," Liam said, his voice low, guttural, brimming with a hurt so profound it bordered on rage. He hadn't meant it. It was a reflex, a desperate attempt to create space, to escape the crushing weight of her accusing eyes and his own unbearable guilt. But the words were out, sharp and final. Sophia didn't need to be told twice. With a sob that tore through her, she turned and fled, her expensive shoes echoing hollowly on the polished marble floor. She didn't look back,
just wanted to escape the suffocating air, the shattered pieces of their burgeoning love, and the unbearable truth that they had both been equally, tragically, and completely wrong about each other. Liam watched her go, a gaping void opening in his chest. The silence she left behind was not empty, but filled with the deafening roar of their argument, the echoes of their accusations, and the painful certainty that their carefully constructed world had just crumbled to dust. The dream of genuine love, untainted by wealth, was now stained by an even greater deception, theirs. The future, once shimmering with possibility, was now a dark, uncertain chasm stretching between two souls too proud, too hurt, and too entangled in their own web of lies to find a way back. Sophia ran until her lungs burned, the opulent streets of the Upper East Side blurring into a tunnel of shame and fury. Her carefully constructed facade, the one that allowed her to explore life beyond her golden cage, had been ripped apart in a single brutal moment, exposing not just her secret, but the gaping wound of Liam's betrayal. She had sought authenticity, longed for a connection free from the distortions of her family name, only to find herself ensnared in a web of deceit spun by a man who, ironically, sought the very same thing. The kind, unassuming writer she had fallen for was a mirage, replaced by a calculating millionaire who had subjected her to a cruel test. The irony was a bitter, suffocating truth. She too had been playing a part, believing her intentions pure, yet the outcome was equally devastating. In the solitude of her sprawling penthouse, the silence was broken only by the frantic beat of her own broken heart, each throb a painful reminder of the genuine laughter and whispered dreams they had once shared, now poisoned by the venom of their revelations. How could something that felt so real, so true, have been built on such an elaborate foundation of lies? Back in his own lavish prison, Liam paced the marble floors, the weight of his grand deception pressing down on him. His pursuit of unadulterated love had led him down a path of manipulation, and the grand reveal he had orchestrated to mend his duplicity had instead shattered their nascent world. He had wanted her to love him for him, not his fortune, yet he had withheld the most crucial part of him until it was too late. The accusations Sophia had hurled, though born of hurt, resonated with an undeniable truth. He had been testing her, playing God with her emotions, all while harboring the very secret he abhorred in others. The sting of her own revelation, the stunning fact that she too was an heiress slumming it, hadn't diminished his pain, it had merely amplified the tragic comedy of their mutual folly. He saw the mirror image of his own motivations in her, a twisted reflection that offered no solace, only deeper regret. Every shared smile, every earnest conversation, every tender touch now felt tainted, yet the memory of their pure connection, the effortless understanding that had blossomed between them, refused to be erased. It was a phantom limb, aching with the absence of what had been, what could have been. Their well-intentioned deceptions, born from a desire for genuine connection, had built an insurmountable barrier brick by painful brick. Pride, a stubborn, unyielding force, kept him from reaching out, from attempting to wreckage the wreckage, but a profound, aching sorrow for the loss of Sophia, the woman he had come to genuinely adore, consumed him.
The quiet intimacy they had forged, believing each other to be simply ordinary, now felt like the most extraordinary thing he had ever lost, and the regret was a heavy cloak, smothering any thought of an easy path forward. Liam's regret deepened with each silent, solitary day. The bitter irony of their mutual deceptions gnawed at him. He, a millionaire, had tested her, only to discover she, an heiress, had been testing him too. He loved her, Sophia, the woman whose spirit and intelligence transcended any fabricated persona. He'd sought authenticity, found it, then shattered it.
The weight of his deception, coupled with the hurt he'd caused, became unbearable. He needed to apologize, not just for the lie, but for his fundamental misunderstanding of genuine connection. Stripping away his defenses, he wrote a handwritten letter, words from the struggling writer persona, laying bare his soul. He didn't know if she'd read it, but it felt like his only path forward, a desperate plea for understanding. The letter, sealed with a simple wax emblem, was discreetly delivered to the apartment building Sophia had claimed, a desperate gamble. Sophia, adrift in her opulent family home, wrestled with a storm of emotions. Anger still simmered, a defensive fire against betrayal, yet a persistent ache of longing pulled at her heart. Could their genuine connection truly have been a lie? The mirror of her own deception reflected back. She, an heiress, had sought connection untainted by wealth, just as he had. Her indignation felt increasingly hypocritical. Then, an unexpected envelope arrived at the modest mailbox she still maintained. The elegant script was undeniably his, the simple wax seal familiar. Her heart hammered with dread and anticipation. She tore it open, bracing for excuses. Instead, Liam's words flowed, a torrent of raw remorse. He acknowledged his monumental error, the arrogance of his test. He confessed his true feelings for her, the woman who had captivated him, explaining his deeply flawed desire to be loved for himself, a vulnerability that struck a chord. An unexpected turn. He openly admitted his awareness of her own hidden identity, not as an accusation, but as a shared understanding of their mutual desire for genuine connection. He saw her fears, her search for truth, mirrored in his flawed pursuit. The accusation she'd rehearsed withered. His admission, a bridge of shared vulnerability, chipped away at her righteous anger, revealing the profound wound of mutual deceit. She closed her eyes, the letter clutched tight, the full weight of her own hypocrisy settling. Could she condemn him entirely when her heart had led her down a strikingly similar path? The path to forgiveness, though arduous, no longer felt entirely closed. A fragile, flickering light of possibility began to pierce the darkness of betrayal. The fragile light that flickered was no sudden blaze, but a painstaking dawn, demanding raw courage from both. Sophia, with Liam's letter and new clarity, eventually agreed to meet. Their initial conversations became a precarious tightrope walk over broken trust, each word meticulously weighed. Liam, stripping every pretense, articulated not just his test, but the profound, crippling fear of inadequacy driving him, the insecurity beneath his gilded facade. Sophia, in turn, laid bare her yearning for a life unburdened by her family name, her deep desire to feel genuinely useful, truly seen beyond inheritance. In these raw, reciprocal confessions, mirroring their flawed quests for authenticity, the first solid tremors of reconciliation began. They forged an unwavering pact, radical honesty, a commitment to lay bare every thought, every past concealment, regardless of discomfort. Their unique journey was not merely rebuilding trust, but constructing an entirely new foundation, stronger than before, cemented by the jagged edges of their mutual deceptions. They learned to navigate the complex tapestry of their lives. Liam, the CEO, and Sophia, the heiress, now both living and loving with fearless transparency. They embraced the potent irony, the hard-won beauty of their origin story, acknowledging their elaborate charades had, paradoxically, delivered them to the most genuine, profound love either had ever known. Their future, a testament to resilience and unwavering belief, unfurled before them, proving that true connection, once tested by fire and forged in truth, could conquer even the most elaborate and ironically challenging circumstances. Thank you for joining us on this extraordinary journey of love, lies, and ultimate truth. If Sophia and Liam's story resonated with your heart, please tap that like button, subscribe to our channel for more tales that move the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We cherish your presence in our storytelling community.